Welcome to Chapter 38, EMS Operations for the EMT. So there are four different types of ambulances. We have a Type 1, Type 2, Type 3, and Type 4. Really, there's Type 1, Type 2, Type 3, and then a medium duty. But these are just the different ambulances that you can work out of. There's the Sprinter or the van type ambulances, or vanbulance, if you want to call it that. I'm not a big fan of them. There's not a whole lot of room in the back of them. So, yeah. Type 3 is what you'll see most of the time. Type 2, Lake West actually has Type 2 ambulances. And then Lake Ozark has medium duty, but they're not quite as big. So there's several different types of rescue units as well. I guess you could call them. So this is like a hazmat response vehicle. This vehicle is actually set up for like a mobile PCI or cardiac cath type deal. Helicopters obviously have ambulances or ambulance helicopters. There's several different types of helicopters that transport patients. Your bigger ones are going to be the ones that load from the back, and then your smaller ones are going to be the ones that load from the side. This type of ambulance is an MRI for a stroke type patient. It is larger. So yeah. Supplies and equipment. So an ambulance without proper equipment may have its agency cited and fined by the state EMS regulatory agency. Yes, there are surprise inspections where an inspector comes down from the state, at least in Missouri, that check to make sure that there's nothing expired, there's nothing wrong with the ambulance, and that it functions properly, and that it has the proper equipment to be an ALS unit. So also you want to know where each item is, what it's for, and when it should be used. So we want to make sure that the ambulance is ready for service when you go to respond to an emergency. Just like firefighters check trucks for do truck checks for their stuff, we also do truck checks for ours. So you're going to inspect the vehicle and equipment at the start of every shift. Do a shift report with the off-going crew if there's something missing or something out of place, something's wrong with the ambulance. You want to report that. And then there's two components. So there's a vehicle component and an equipment component. And I know it says that driver completed by the driver and crew leader. It's done by both, at least in our area. A truck check is done by both. So yeah. In your vehicle component, you're going to have things like proper tire pressure. You're going to have checking the engine oil, the transmission fluid, making sure that there's gas in the vehicle, or diesel, whichever one it is. There's plenty of other fluids. So you just want to make sure that you complete that. And then making sure that all the emergency lights are on and work properly, and all the driving lights work properly as well. In the equipment component, so this is going to be all of the equipment for patient care use. You're going to just make sure that you check to make sure that you have the proper equipment, that it's there, that it's workable or usable, it's not expired, or anything like that. I'm not going to get a whole into detail about the ambulance checks because Ambulance checks are done according to service. So one service may have a different check than another service. So it was just one of those things that I'm not going to get like too detailed in. But your book does go into detail, so I would suggest reading that, because I'm 90% sure that there are some things out there in your book that the test will go over. Checks are subject to legal matters, so these checks can be subpoenaed. So if there is an issue with patient care, most of the time these lawyers are going to request that the ambulance check at the very beginning of the day get pulled and be used as evidence. So if, say, you forgot a bag, okay, so there was no airway bag on the truck, okay, so does that mean that I can't do things? No, it doesn't. But what is that bag? It has stuff in it that is vital to patient care. Okay, so that airway bag has, you know, an intubation kit. It has oxygen. It has the eye gels. It has various things in it. So if you don't have that bag and you go on a respiratory patient and it takes you, you know, instead of taking that bag in because you didn't have it, and now you have to either wait for another crew or you have to take your patient out to the truck instead of providing immediate care right there, then they can subpoena that, and they can be like, well, it's your fault that you didn't have that bag, and we're going to sue you. Okay. Or they can criminally charge you with stuff. So, receiving and responding to a call. So, EMDs. We talked about these way back in chapter 1, I believe. But EMDs, so these guys ask questions of the caller and assign a priority to call. They provide pre-arrival medical instructions to callers. They also provide us with information. They dispatch and coordinate EMS resources and coordinate with other public safety agencies as well. So these are the basic questions that should be asked on every single medical call. So location of the patient, callback number, what's the problem, how old the patient is, the patient's sex, if the patient is conscious or if they're breathing. So these when dispatchers ask there's a program called QA, or I'm sure there's other programs out there that provide the line of question that is required. So like they enter into the program the chief complaint, and then this QA program basically lists out the questions that they have to ask the patient or the caller in order to ascertain certain things. And then based off of those questions, they're going to, or the answers to those questions, they're going to provide pre-arrival instructions. Typically, most generic instructions are to turn on a house light, porch light, and put the dogs up, and then gather any kind of medications. So that's minimum. Okay, so operating the ambulance. So being a safe ambulance operator requires you to be physically and mentally fit, be able to perform under stress, have a positive attitude about your ability as a driver, but not be an unreasonable risk taker, be tolerant of other drivers, and never drive while under the influence of any substance. I have had some very bad partners, not just EMTs, but medics too, who can't drive. And I'm sure that people don't like my driving as well, but they're out there, and you kind of have to deal with it, teach them to be better drivers, and all of that. Never drive while taking prescription medications. Never drive with a suspended license. Always wear your glasses or contact lenses if required, and evaluate your ability to drive based on personal stress, illness, and fatigue. So you have to have a valid driver's license. Some programs, some services require you to have a Class E driver's license or a chauffeur's license. It's just a written test that you have to go take at the DMV. Some services don't require it. So like, it's more the private services because you're a driver for hire. And the like fire departments and districts like Lake West or I believe Osage Beach doesn't require it either. So those don't require a Class E driver's license. So even though certain privileges are granted during an emergency, those exemptions do not provide immunity to the driver. And these privileges are granted during emergency situations that apply only if the driver uses warning devices. And that is not even necessarily the case. Okay. Driving is one of the biggest things that we do, and it's probably the most often that we get in trouble for. So when you drive an ambulance, you are driving that ambulance and you're asking for permission. It is not guaranteed that anybody's going to pull over for you because they don't. People are oblivious. They have music playing. They have distractions going. They're on their phone. They're messing with their kids. They just have all these distractions, and they do not pay attention. Okay. Most statutes allow you to park wherever necessary as long as life and property are not endangered. Proceeding past stop signs and signals, you also always want to make sure that you stop before you stop at or go through a red light or a stop sign, and check both ways because again, people are not paying attention even though you've got lights and sirens going. These people are not going to be paying attention. Exceeding past the posted speed limit, technically, Missouri does not have a law that says how fast you can go over the speed limit when you're running lights and sirens. So you could go 20 miles an hour, you could go 25 miles an hour over. But the typical accepted amount over is about 10 miles an hour over. Passing vehicles in a no passing zone after properly signaling and taking precautions. And then disregarding regulations that govern direction of travel and turning with proper use of caution and signals. So if for some reason you have to get into the oncoming traffic lane, you can get into the oncoming traffic lane. I have driven down the turn lane. I have driven down divided highways on the other side. I've driven down the wrong way down a on-ramp. So just be smart and careful about it. So using the warning devices, the siren should never be used indiscriminately. Use the horn. Use visual warning devices day or night, and the vehicle should be seen at least 360 degrees in an emergency response mode. So DOT kind of puts out a list of things that are required for an ambulance, and that means the lights and sirens, the horn. The siren has to be able to change modes, so it's two different types of siren. The lights have to be seen in daylight for 150 feet, and then they have to be seen 100 feet in the nighttime. Those are obtuse numbers. I'm not totally sure what the correct numbers are, but it's stuff like that. But every ambulance in the U.S. has to go by these guidelines in order for it to be an ambulance. Safety and speed. So excessive speed increases the probability of a collision. Speed increases stopping distance, reducing the chance of avoiding a hazardous situation. Okay, so again, while Missouri does not technically have a max speed that you can go with lights and sirens, 10 is the typical. I do not like escorted or multiple vehicle responses. Sometimes it just can't be helped. But if I can avoid having an escort, I will. Because inexperienced ambulance operators often follow the escort vehicle too closely, and then they're unable to stop when that lead vehicle brakes too hard. The other issue is that if you don't follow it closely enough, or you're too close, what are they going to do? They're going to the people around us, the other drivers, they're going to see the first emergency vehicle, and then they're going to assume that that was the only one, and then take off, causing accidents. So factors that can affect a response: day of the week, time of the day, weather, road maintenance and construction, railroads, bridges and tunnels, schools and school buses. So you kind of have to know your area. Of course, you know, work traffic, school traffic, all of those things. During the summer, we get a little bit busier. We start to have traffic backed up coming into Camdenton. And we have an increased amount of traffic. So GPS navigation is often installed, but it is not a substitute for intimate knowledge of the response area, and it may become a distraction as well. You want to obtain a detailed map of your service area. We have a couple backups in our trucks. We have a GPS that tells us where the incident is, and then we have a map book, but it's not really a map book. It's more of a this is how you get to it type of deal. It's like an explanation of how to get to that place. Response safety summary. So minimize lights and sirens or hot responses. Driving with lights and sirens involves high risk. Wear your seatbelt. Know where you are going before you respond. Use GPS and check the maps, and be familiar with your response area. Highway incidents. Keep unnecessary units and people off the highway. Avoid crossovers unless a turn can be completed without obstructing traffic. And protect the scene if yours is the first unit on scene. Safety at highway incidents. So wear your PPE. Place cones, flares. Reduce any kind of emergency lighting. Unit placement is important, and backing up. So we want to avoid backing up on scene, especially during emergencies. All right, so here is a video.
The two ambulances collided on a street in the Bronx, and we are just learning several people had to be taken to the hospital. CBS 2's Matt Kozar is live on the scene in the Mott Haven section. Matt.
Jessica, when these two ambulances crashed into each other, witnesses told me it sounded like an explosion, like a bomb went off. You can see them just behind me. One of the ambulances is on its side. The front of the other one is smashed. Police officers and Good Samaritans had to break through the windows to pull out the injured EMTs. We have surveillance video from a security camera of a deli on the corner that captures the crash. Take a look at this video. The two ambulances crashing into one another as one is driving down Brook Avenue, the other driving down East 142nd Street. The impact knocking one of the ambulances on its side. Here is a different angle of the crash that we shot from the ground just a few moments ago. FDNY officials tell me that both of the ambulances were responding to a call about a block away of an intoxicated person who became violent. EMTs on that scene had called for backup. They were having trouble dealing with that patient, which is why both of the ambulances ambulances rather were rushing to the scene as fast as they could to provide backup. We spoke to a number of people who heard and saw the crash. They told me they're thankful no one was killed. But
it's like a boom, a real loud boom. That's what I...
Like an explosion?
Yeah, like an explosion. This is like the third one in this corner. They have to do something about it because this is like the third one.
One was coming this way. When this one was going to turn this way, the other one came. That's when they both collided.
4 EMTs were hurt in this crash. They were rushed to Lincoln Hospital. We are told at this hour they are in serious condition. One Good Samaritan who broke through the windows to help pull out those EMTs had cuts to his hand. He was treated and is expected to be okay. Reporting live in the Mott Haven section of the Bronx, Matt Kozar, CBS 2 News.
All right, so here's the deal. Some takeaways from this. So they were both responding to the same call. Neither one of them stopped at the intersection before proceeding through the intersection. And they both collided with each other. So now, what have we done? So we need another ambulance to respond to the original scene. We need at least 4 ambulances for this scene. So we've created a whole issue from basically not paying attention. Again, I can sit here and armchair quarterback the whole thing, but just initial observations. Neither one of them stopped at the stops at the intersection, and neither one of them were paying attention to see where they were going. So, yeah.
The 2 ambulances collided on a street in the 2 ambulances.
So transferring the patient to the ambulance, we want to make sure that we select the proper patient carrying device, package the patient for transfer, move the patient to the ambulance, and then load. So packaging, basically readying the patient to be moved, and combining patient and patient carrying device as a unit ready for transfer. Sick and injured patients must be packaged so that the condition is not aggravated. Before placing your patient on a carrying device, complete necessary care for wounds or other injuries, stabilize any kind of impaled object, check your dressings and splints, cover the patient, and secure to a patient carrying device. Protecting the patient, so they must be secured to that patient carrying device, whatever it is, stair chair, backboard, scoop stretcher, cot. At minimum, 3 straps to secure, so chest, waist, and lower extremities, and use a shoulder harness if available. So the EMTs at greater risk in the patient compartment, we want to remain seated, wear a seatbelt and harness if possible, avoid any unnecessary movement during response and transport, and make sure all equipment is secured. Transporting to the hospital, we're going to continue our assessment, secure the stretcher in place in the ambulance, position and secure the patient, and adjust the security straps, and also prepare for respiratory and cardiac complications. Loosen any kind of constricting clothing, load relative or friend who must accompany the patient. I try to avoid taking anybody in my ambulance that is not the patient. If I do, it's going to be a mom or something like that for a kid, and they're going to ride in the front. That's Mercy's policy, is that they ride in the front. Unless they're like a small kid, then they're going to ride in the back with me. As far as like service animals and various things like that, yes, I am okay with taking a service animal if I have to. If for some reason I can't, or there's somebody there that can take the service animal, then great. Let them take the service animal. So we're going to notify the hospital that we're en route to them. We're going to let them know just that short little radio report that basically says, hey, I'm coming to you. This is what I've got. This is how old my patient is. This is what I've done. And these are the vital signs. Continue to provide emergency care as required. Use safe practices during transport. Complete additional patient information and continue assessment and monitor vital signs. And notify the receiving facility. The entire scene may create a terrifying experience for a kid. A toy, such as a teddy bear, can do a lot to calm the frightened child. And the presence of a female EMT or police officer may also be helpful. So when we transfer patients to the emergency department staff, if it's a routine admission situation or when an illness or injury is not life-threatening, check first to see what is to be done with the patient. Typically, they're going to let you know, hey, you're going to room 16, or you're going to triage. You're going to assist the emergency department staff as required and provide a verbal report. That verbal report is going to be a more in-depth report to the staff. As soon as you're free from patient care activities, you're going to prepare the pre-hospital care report and then transfer the patient's personal effects and obtain a release from the hospital. So terminating the call. So at the hospital, you're going to do a quick cleanup of the patient compartment and any equipment that you may have used, and make sure that it's kind of back in place. Some places you can replace equipment with at the hospital. Some places you can't. Just kind of depends on the service and the hospital and the agreement. So, and then you're going to make up your cot. En route to quarters, radio dispatch, let them know that you're in service, en route back to quarters. Refuel the ambulance if necessary, and then air out the ambulance if necessary. Sometimes this is very necessary. So once in quarters, you're going to place any kind of contaminated linens in a biohazard bag, clean any equipment that touched the patient, clean and disinfect inside and out, clean and sanitize the patient compartment, and prepare yourself for service for the next call. Okay. You may also replace expendable items, refill oxygen cylinders, replace any kind of patient care equipment that may be needed, and then do a post-operation vehicle maintenance procedure as required. Typically, we don't do that. Clean the vehicle and complete your paperwork. Air rescue. So when to call for air rescue. Operational reasons, so to speed transport to a distant trauma center, or when extrication of a high priority patient is prolonged, and air rescue can speed transport when the patient must be rescued from a remote location as well. Clinical reasons, so the patient's in shock, they have a GCS less than 10, they have head injury with altered mental status, they have chest trauma and respiratory distress, or they have penetrating injuries to a body cavity. Amputation, extensive burns, serious mechanism of injury, or the patient is a post-cardiac arrest with the pulse. How to call? It's going to be service dependent. We get on the radio and we just tell our dispatch, hey, I need a helicopter. That's typically, we let the dispatchers take care of all of that, so we don't have to. So it is very agency dependent. And typically that's the way it's going to go, is that you're going to tell dispatch, hey, I'd like a helicopter on standby, or either ground standby or air standby. Of course, there's a difference. So if they're on ground standby, they aren't going to take any other call while you still have them on ground standby. And then when you decide to either cancel them, then they're going to cancel, go back into service, or they're going to come back into service or go out of service and take the call from us and fly out to us and take patient care. Or you can put them on air standby. And so a reason to do that would be if the patient, or if you get on scene and, or you're en route to the scene and what dispatch is giving you is suggestive of needing to fly out, then put them on air standby until you can figure out where you're going to land them. How to set up a landing zone. So describe the landing zone to the air rescue service. You want to let them know any kind of terrain, major landmarks, estimated distance to the nearest town, other pertinent information such as wires, ditches, or wind. When you approach a helicopter, do not approach unless escorted by flight personnel. Allow the crew to direct load of the patient. Stay clear of the tail rotor at all times. Keep all traffic and vehicles at least 100 feet from the vehicle or the helicopter. Do not smoke near the aircraft, and be aware of any kind of danger areas. The biggest danger area is down here at the tail rotor. So you never go around the back of the vehicle to get to the other side. You go around the front of the aircraft to get to the other side. And again, you're going to take direction from your flight crew. They're going to be the ones that do everything. But if you were to approach the helicopter without the flight crew, you're going to make eye contact with the pilot, and the pilot's going to let you know whether or not it's safe to come. So if you have any questions, let me know, and I will answer those to the best of my ability.